Now, Mr. President, on Monday evening, reports came out that Rupert Murdoch, owner of Fox News, acknowledged in a deposition that hosts of the network promoted the false narrative that Donald Trump won the 2020 election. Asked if he could have stepped in to prevent this, Mr. Murdoch acknowledged that he could have, but chose not to. He could have stepped in, but chose not to, and expressed regret for not doing so. To this day, several Fox News hosts continue promoting the big lie. They keep spreading the big lie, despite mounting evidence that behind the scenes, many top hosts and executives at Fox have recognized the stolen election narrative is entirely bogus. Nevertheless, they continue broadcasting it all the time. This morning, Leader Jeffries and I wrote a letter to Mr. Murdoch demanding that he do what he should have done a long time ago: order Tucker Carlson and other hosts on Fox News to stop spreading lies about the election. They need to stop giving a platform to dangerous and entirely unfounded conspiracy theories that eat at the wellspring of our democracy. And they need to admit on the air that they were wrong to engage in such negligent and destructive behavior. Sadly, too much damage has already been done to our democracy. A significant segment of voters, by some measures as much as 30% of the electorate, still do not believe that the 2020 election was legitimate. And what Fox News hosts have done is flat out dangerous. Dangerous. When people doubt that elections are on the level, that is the beginning of the end of this wonderful democracy, because elections are our wellspring. They're the core of what the Founding Fathers set up. It was the great novelty of the Constitution that is spread around the world. And when conspiracy theories like the big lie are allowed to grow, violence can ensue, as we all saw for ourselves on January the 6th. And Mr. Murdoch's testimony is all the more alarming after Speaker McCarthy is reportedly allowing Tucker Carlson to review highly sensitive security camera footage of the events surrounding the violent January 6th insurrection. Sharing that footage is a grave mistake that risks emboldening the supporters of the big lie. Mr. Murdoch, Fox News executives, and hosts all have a choice, a very important choice. They can continue broadcasting lies about our elections and further erode trust in our democracy, or they can admit their mistake, start telling the truth, and move beyond this shameful chapter in their company's history by coming clean with their viewers and with the American people. We hope Mr. Murdoch heeds our call. The survival of our democracy is too important. Now, on the new BiPAC bill. Later today, a bipartisan group of senators, including Senators Brown and Vance of Ohio and Fetterman and Casey of Pennsylvania, a bipartisan group, plan to introduce the Railway Safety Act of 2023. In the aftermath of the terrible accident in East Palestine, this is precisely the kind of proposal we need to see in Congress. A bipartisan rail safety bill, one that includes provisions relevant to the accident that happened a month ago. I salute them for this fine bipartisan effort and commit to them that I am going to work with the sponsors of the bill to move this bill forward. We should pass it, a bipartisan bill, here in the Senate and hopefully in the House. I'll do whatever I can to make sure that happens. The bill is as smart as it is necessary. It includes provisions to increase safety protocols for trains with hazardous materials, new requirements for crews operating trains, and increases the fines that can be imposed on rail companies that engage in reckless behavior. And we must do more, because the accident like the one in East Palestine didn't come out of the blue. On the contrary, the chair of the NTSB said the Norfolk Southern derailment was 100% preventable. The fault here lies with the rail companies, who spent years lobbying to slash crucial safety regulations intended to keep people safe. It has created a dangerous culture where the profit motive is king above all others, even above the need to keep people safe. There are countless small towns just like East Palestine across America with rail lines running through them. In my dear state of New York, there are lots of them, particularly in upstate. They're all at greater risk when rail giants work together to slash safety, slash worker compensation, and place shareholder returns above everything else. Now on ESG. Later today, my Republican colleagues will force a vote here on the floor to reverse a Labor Department rule allowing retirement fiduciaries to use ESG if they so wish when evaluating investments. I will strongly oppose this ill-considered proposal. My reasons, which I'll outline in a minute, are also outlined in an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal editorial page today, and I ask unanimous consent it be added to the record.
Without objection.
Republicans have been trying mightily to turn ESG into their newest dirty little acronym. They're using the same tired attacks we've heard for a while now, that this is more wokeness, that it's intrusion into the markets, and on and on and on. But Republicans are missing or ignoring an important point. Nothing in the DOL rule imposes a mandate. Again, let me repeat that. Nothing in the rule they seek to undo imposes a mandate. It merely says that if fiduciaries wish to look at ESG factors, and if their methods are shown to be prudent, it's a very narrow rule, then they have the freedom to do so. The freedom to do so. It's literally allowing the free market to do its work. This isn't about ideological preference. It's about looking at the biggest picture possible for investors to minimize risk and maximize returns. Why shouldn't you look at the risk posed by an increasingly volatile climate incidents? Why shouldn't they consider aging populations or other trends that could impact their portfolio? In fact, more than 90% of S&P 500 companies already publish ESG reports today. The present rule gives investment managers an option. The Republican rule, on the other hand, ties investors' hands. No freedom for companies to choose what they think is right. Republicans talk about their love for the free market, small government, let the private sector do its work. But their obsession with eliminating ESG would do the opposite, forcing their own views down the throats of every company and every investor. I say, let the market work. Let the market work. Mr. and Mrs. Free Market Republicans, what the heck are you doing here? Imposing your views on these companies? If the market naturally leads to the consideration of ESG factors, then Republicans should practice what they've long preached. Get out of the way. AUMF. We have a lot to talk about today, and there are a lot of very important issues before us. I want to offer a brief but heartfelt thanks to Chairman Menendez and Ranking Member Risch, as well as Senators Kaine and Young, who have worked so diligently for this proposal for so long, for reaching an agreement to mark up next week a long-awaited measure that many of us has waited for, a repeal of the Iraq AUMF. I'm glad that this effort has been, for the most part, bipartisan and bicameral. It was bipartisan and bicameral under full Republican control of government, under full Democratic control of government, and it is now every bit bipartisan under divided government. Staying bipartisan. There's support on both sides of the aisle for this proposal. because both Democrats and Republicans have come to the same conclusion. We need to put the Iraq war squarely behind us once and for all. And doing that means we should extinguish the legal authority that initiated the war to begin with. So thank you. Thank you, Chairman Menendez. Thank you, Ranking Member Risch, for moving forward in this repeal in your committee. And again, kudos, accolades to Senators Kaine and Young for their great work, too. We haven't yet passed this, but their work gives us a real chance to see some light, finally, at the end of this long tunnel. It's my hope we can bring this bill to the floor during this work period. Now, later today, Mr. President, I'll join a number of Senate Democratic colleagues to talk about a new report that throws a spotlight on the dangerous ways the Republican budget proposals would harm average Americans. As has been the case so many times this year, this report tells a story of contrasts. On the one hand, Democrats and President Biden have spent the last 2 years reducing the federal deficit, lowering drug costs, lowering people's energy bills, and making sure the wealthiest pay their fair share. But here are just a few of the things the Republican budget proposals would do. Listen to this. The American people ain't going to like it. Republican proposals would push millions of Americans off Social Security benefits and raise the retirement age to 70. Republican proposals would privatize Medicare, which would gut seniors' benefits, threatening their access to guaranteed services, and force those who are able to remain on Medicare to pay higher premiums. Republican proposals would cut Medicaid by $2 trillion, $2.2 trillion, and end coverage for tens of millions of Americans, especially people with disabilities, seniors, families living on lower incomes. A large part of Medicaid goes to help people who are in nursing homes and assisted living. And that takes a huge burden off 30, 40, 50-year-olds who want to care for their parents, but those high costs are something beyond their budgets. And Republican proposals would narrow health care eligibility for veterans and cut VA mandatory funding. And so much more, so much more. These proposals are anathema, I believe, to the American people for sure, but even to most Republicans. That's why we Democrats keep insisting that Speaker McCarthy answer the one question we've all been asking and gotten no answer to. The question we've been asking Speaker McCarthy is, where is your plan? We believe a plan this drastic will not get the votes in the Republican conference in the House. So, Speaker McCarthy, show us your plan. Speaker McCarthy, show us your plan. Republicans love to tout themselves as the party of the average American, but actions speak louder than words. When Republicans help tax cheats, call for putting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid on the chopping block, and cut taxes for billionaires and mega corporations, there's no question where they truly stand, with the wealthy, with the very well-connected, and with the biggest of corporations. Finally, I want to make a quick mention of an important nominee who is testifying before the Senate Commerce Committee. Recently, President Biden announced Phil Washington as his nominee to lead the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. The FAA needs to have a leader as soon as possible. Americans cannot afford to go through another busy travel season like the one they went through last winter. When you have widespread computer failures, delays, and an inability to react quickly, not having an FAA head is terrible. I look forward to saying more in the coming weeks, but I thank my colleagues in the Commerce Committee, led by the very capable, very diligent, very hardworking Maria Cantwell, for holding their hearing today on Mr. Washington. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.